Welcome, everyone. My name is Patty Crankshaw Quimby, and I'm excited for you to be here to talk about I Adopted You. Now what? It's not an unusual question. We often hear those questions after people have adopted pets and they come and ask for some help. So I hope you enjoy this. And certainly, if you have questions, put your hand up and I'm pretty informal. I like people to engage. So, well, let me see if I can get this slide control. There we go. A little bit about me. I've been in the world of animal welfare for 23 years. I was an animal control officer, humane law enforcement officer. I was the shelter coordinator, and I've been the director since 2011. I'm the president of the Professional Animal Workers of Maryland, which is the Association for Animal Control and Shelters across the state. I sit on the board of veterinary examiners as one of the two consumer members, and I'm very lucky to be involved in our Maryland Spay-Neuter Advisory Board. This is a picture of my husband and our tortoise, Gamera, who is well over 100 pounds. So they're two of my housemates. My husband, 4 dogs, 2 cats, 3 tortoises, and a geriatric gecko. So I have the gamut at my house. So the pet industry is quite interesting. I can say when I started in this field 23 years ago, it is totally different from when I started. Some fun facts. 2022, the pet industry market was worth $159.1 billion. I can't even fathom those kinds of numbers, and it has continued to increase. 48.1 million homes have at least one dog in the U.S. 31.9 million homes in the U.S. have at least one cat, and 11.8 million homes have fish. Interestingly, 4.5% of U.S. homes have reptiles, and this has doubled in the past 10 years. And we're seeing a lot more exotics in homes, such as pets that people can have in a container, things like that. So I always find it interesting because we're seeing an increase in those animals coming into shelter. So that made sense to me when I found that number. We are experiencing a shortage of veterinarians across North America. Currently, there's approximately 116,000 veterinarians in the U.S. By 2030, we're estimating that we're going to need another 41,000, and we're probably going to see a deficit of at least 20,000 vets by then. So if you have pets and you're seeing a concern that you can't get into your vet, it's real. We are seeing those problems out there. I know that in our area, working with our veterinarians and their hospitals, it's hard to find veterinarians to come and work. The entire industry is changing. Those coming out of college and veterinary school aren't looking to work the 60 and 80-hour weeks that many of us have grown up working. They want life balance, which I can totally appreciate, but that means we're going to need more bodies doing the work. So I broke this into 3 sections. The first section is about choosing a pet. Their energy level, your lifestyle, and cost. You'll see I have up there, know the breed before you get the dog. That's something really important that we love to talk to people about. Excuse me. So what's your lifestyle? Are you a couch potato? If you're a couch potato, and I appreciate couch potatoes because I'm one extreme or the other, I'm either a couch potato or I'm busy. Don't get yourself a dog that's going to need an excess amount of exercise. There are breeds out there that we definitely know just need more physical and mental stimulation. If you're a busy bee and someone who likes to exercise or walk or hike, Um, it's always nice to be able to take our pets with us. So think about that if that's something that is interesting in your life that you want to include your pets in. It's really important to balance the energy level and exercise needs of that pet with your household. Often we see people contacting us with problems because their lifestyle is not matching what the animal needs. If you travel a lot, you'll need to take the pets with you, or you'll need a sitter. So those are things to think about before adopting or buying a pet. And where you live, you were talking about living in Easton Club East, and there's restrictions of pets out there. It's important to consider like how big your yard is, the neighborhood rules, who else is in your neighborhood. I know that there's some neighborhoods here in the Easton area or Talbot County that you're not allowed to put up a fence. So those are important things. I have a physical fenced backyard because sure, an electric fence can keep animals in, but they don't keep other things and people and dogs out. So it's important to consider those things. Visitors. This is something often people think about, but they just are like, oh, it'll all work out. If you are somebody, especially here, I know that a lot of us have friends and family that come to see us because we're in a nice area for a good part of the year. We can go boating, we can go to the beach. If you have people that come in your home and visit, it's important that you consider that when you're getting a pet. You don't want a pet that's afraid of others or shows fear, aggression. If you have grandchildren, it's important to consider the animal, and if it is an animal that gets along with small children, or if it gets along, with preteens, not really littles that are going to chase it around. And we talked a little bit about hobbies. If you're an active person, if you want to go out on the boat, I know a lot of people that love to take their dogs out on the boat with them. I also know somebody, unfortunately, who adopted a dog, and the dog is scared to death of the boat, and it's breaking their heart. So they're trying to work on that. But if you like to go hiking, it's just really important to be considering those things. Often we think about them after the fact, and I can speak to myself. I am somebody who I fall in love and then I work it out later. But it's not always the easiest way to make things happen. And then we think about nutrition when we're talking about pets. All of these things come into play because there is a dollar amount that comes with pets. There is a time amount that comes with pets, and their needs and our needs. So special needs nutrition, of course, allergies or medical conditions. When we're talking about the age of an animal, puppies and kittens obviously have special nutritional needs. Active animals have a higher need for calories, and older animals, that's often when we see different dietary needs. Of course, our veterinarians often have contracts with specific food companies such as Hill Science Diet, which is great, or Purina or what have you. But do your research and make sure that, you don't necessarily have to spend a great deal of money on food for them to have proper nutrition. I always say compare labels, just like you compare labels for your food, compare labels for your pet's food. You might be surprised that there are some pretty decent middle of the range cost foods out there. And sometimes animals don't like those more expensive foods. I've found people donate them a lot to us because they don't have really a great flavor. They're very nutritious, but they don't like the flavor of them. And then we talk about supplements. I always say to defer to your veterinarian for what's best with that because, they're the professionals. Sometimes we might think that our animals need melatonin and glucosamine and all these things. And not that they could hurt them, but sometimes the combination or they don't need them. And I am a believer that less is more. If we don't have to medicate our pets or ourselves, then better for all of us.
Patty,
Yeah.
for a while there was an issue about where the food was being made because of fear of products coming in from China, I think, that some other countries. It's not always so easy to tell, though, from the label, because if they are packaged in this country, it'll say US, but we don't know if it's being manufactured in the US. What are your thoughts on that?
So I really try to focus on US or Canadian centered companies that I know that the food is being made here in our area. I also, we're going to talk about, toys and all those things. I think it's really important to know that sometimes those toys that are coming in from out of the country, China or things, have chemicals on them. And I'm going to share a story in a little bit about my dog and some Christmas toys I bought. He's fine, but we had a situation from them. So it is very important to know your company, do some company research, do food research. And I've had that situation where I have a very picky cat and he likes crap food. I have tried to give him everything possible because cats are
what kind of food does he like? Did you say crack food?
Crap.
Oh.
Like the cheapest thing out there. And cats are obligate carnivores. So I really try to give everybody, my cats get canned food. I have 2 cats. My one cat will eat anything and everything, and he'll eat the other cat's food. And this Simon, my cat, who we have had since he was a foster kitten, he is just picky as can be. So I really have to struggle and look and find something that I feel comfortable feeding him. But it's true, we need to pay attention to where our food is coming from for all of us. But yeah, that's a good point. So thank you for bringing that up. Next, choosing your vet for your pet. I honestly feel this is as personal of a choice as choosing your own physician. There's so many things to think about when we're talking about choosing a veterinarian. Of course, cost comes into play, but for the most part, I think most of our veterinarians are within the same range. It depends on their services. So if you are somebody who wants to see the same veterinarian every time your pet goes to the vet, you have to consider if you want to go to a veterinary hospital that has multiple vets in the practice or only one vet. The benefits to multiple vets in a practice are, some are pretty obvious. You can get in probably sooner when you need to. They often have more extended hours than, a one vet practice. My animals go to 3 different vets, but my primary vet is a one vet practice. He's trying to get another veterinarian in, but as I shared, there's kind of a shortage, and he's been trying to get a new vet for 3 years, and he's had some relief vets. So he had to cut his hours back, which then made me have to look for another practice to help me. And the practice my other practice I go to has multiple vets, and they have extended hours. They have after hours care, at least somebody who can talk to you on the phone. For some people that is a deal breaker, like you absolutely feel like you need to be able to have a conversation after hours. Some people, it's not that important to them. And so that's something when you're talking to vet hospitals, I consider it interviewing them. Of course, word of mouth is fabulous, and talking to your friends who do they love, who have they not had great experiences with, is wonderful. But I encourage pet owners and new pet owners to kind of call and get the details from each vet hospital of what they provide. Is concierge medicine important? Just like we have them in human medicine, we have some concierge veterinary services, and we have some in our area where, they're looking outside the box. They're providing you every possible preventative measure to keep your pets healthy. Some of these you pay a fee at the beginning of every year, and then that allows you for some special services. Are you interested in holistic medicine? Not every veterinarian is schooled deeply in holistic medicine. If that's something you're interested in for your pets, you should be asking the veterinary practice, because there's nothing worse to me than to decide that you're going to go somewhere, choose this as your doctor, your veterinarian, and then they're not really providing what you think you want for your pet. And honestly, the personality of the vet is really important. I think about, I am a very blunt, tell me what's going on when I'm at my doctor. I don't like my doctor to be, well, we could do this. No, tell me what I need to do and let's do it. And I'm the same way with my pets. Some people like to be coddled and like to be, explained every possible option. Some people like, different forms of communication. So it's important that you jive with your vet, because if you don't jive with your vet, just like if you don't jive with your doctor, you're not going to have the full positive experience that we all really want for ourselves and our animals. It's really important. We are lucky in our area here in Talbot County. We have 7 vet hospitals. Dr. Colston is probably retiring soon. He's only doing wellness visits. He's been a vet here for decades, but we have some really wonderful vet hospitals right here in Talbot County. So we are lucky that way. Other areas, we look just south of us in Dorchester County. There's kind of a service desert for animals, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of pet owners in that area, and it's a very big county. So we talk about, we now have a pet, and what do we do? Can I groom this pet myself? Is it a pet that you can put in the bathtub and scrub up and take care of yourself? Are you able to trim the nails yourself, clean the ears? I have 2 dogs that let me trim their nails, and 2 dogs that turned into rabid alligators rolling around acting crazy when it's time to get their nails trimmed. So guess who doesn't trim their nails? I pay somebody else to trim my dog's nails, even though this is what I do for a living, is animals. So it's important that if those are things that you feel like you can do, or that you look to find somebody who can help you. There are different animals that need some more deep grooming. I have bulldogs, so their fur is short. I can throw them in the bathtub, or I can hose them outside. But when I have my cat Simon that I spoke of, he is a long-haired cat, and he needs a hygiene clip probably about 4 to 5 times a year. Now, I can do that. He is still for me because we've been doing it since he was a kitten. But cats in general aren't real easy with that. Sometimes long-haired cats need to be bathed, specifically Persian cats, any of those brachiocephalic cats that have the mushy face. They can't get to places the way some other cats can. I have a friend with Persians, and I love when she posts, she gives them baths, she blow dries them, and I'm always amazed that she can do this for her pets. I also had we called him a peacock. He was a Pekingese and a Cocker Spaniel mix, and he had hair. So he had to be groomed on a regular basis. Doodles and poodles definitely need to be groomed. They can get very tangled. Poodles, sometimes people don't realize that hair, it just turns into little knots and it's very uncomfortable. So they have to be groomed on a regular basis. Long-haired dogs, like I shared, everything from a long-haired Chihuahua that weighs 3 pounds to an Afghan hound. So these are things that I really encourage people to consider when they're looking at new pets, if that's something you want to take on. This is not only a cost, but it is a time consumption, having to brush these animals, having to make sure that they're not knotted and that they're safe and healthy. And then you could get a wonderful little puppy who is great until 7 months old, and all of a sudden they do not want to be groomed. They're very nippy, they're very fearful, and we never really know sometimes what makes these things change. But those are things to be paying attention to also when we have a new pet. If we feel like we can't handle it, we encourage you to find a groomer. That's something else we're very lucky for in our area. We have quite a number of groomers. Some of the vet hospitals have groomers. Of course, we have PetSmart, but we have a lot of one-on-one groomers that will come to your house and groom your pet, or that you can take it to their facility. And they're pretty reasonable, I think, for what they do. Of course, prices vary, but they're all around the same thing in our area, I think. So supplies, this is where I was talking about toys, and the $159 billion pet industry. This is a big part of it. Of course, there are things we need, and litter pans, bowls, crates, toys, and then there are all the things that we don't need, but we want to get for our pets, like cute dresses for some of us, catios, all of that. Again, we're going back to the discussion of this is something really important because I experienced it, to know where these things are coming from. I am somebody who I get lots of toys for my animals. I have, as I said, I have 2 English bulldogs, an American Victorian mixed bulldog, and then I have a newer, she was a foster fail, and she was a cruelty case, so I had her for over a year before we could adopt her. She is a Boston Terrier Frenchie. So they need lots of things to chew on and lots of things to keep their mind stimulated. So I buy a lot of toys throughout the year, but at Christmas, I go overboard. I had bought some of those stuffed animals that they sell at PetSmart that are hanging there. And my one dog, who was a bottle baby, he was nursing. He likes to nurse on soft toys. And so he had his new toy and he was nursing. And the next day when we got up, he couldn't close his mouth. And I was afraid. I was looking in his mouth. I was afraid he got a piece of string tied somewhere and it was swollen. So I got him into the veterinarian, and Dr. Coughlin really felt like it was a reaction to probably chemicals on the toys because he's a nurser. So that was my lesson after having pets, for my entire life. Just a couple years ago, this happened, that I really need to be paying attention, not to just what I'm feeding them, but to what I'm giving them as enrichment. I already wasn't giving them rawhide bones because I knew that they could get lodged or things like that, but I never personally considered those toys as being potentially a problem. So, if you have a dog who likes to shred things and then you throw it away, probably not an issue. But if you have a dog who likes to nurse on things like Hemi does, it's really important to know where your toys are coming from.
Well, we have a dog that likes to tear those toys apart and eat the chew on the squeaker or tear that out, or you find shreds everywhere. So it's become very important to us to buy certain brands that are, and they say they're indestructible, but I don't think there's such thing. But But the things that take a little longer to destroy and eat, because we find it come out the other end, which is not.
Yeah, it's very scary. Yeah, I had I had a 100-pound. He was a Chow Chesapeake mix, and he liked to eat everything under the sun. And our yard, we called it the rainbow yard because you never knew what toy he had shredded, what he had eaten. So it is important. We also, our dogs that like to shred things in our house don't get things that they can shred unless we're right there, which it sounds like you're similar to that, because it can be quite a problem. For some reason, labs like to eat socks. I don't know how many vet hospitals I've talked to where, oh yeah, we just had, removed a sock from this lab's intestines, or, they're just crazy. Our dogs do whatever they want. There's no rhyme or reason to why they do these things, but it is important to pay attention to those things. And there are places, so litter pans, when we talk about cats, anybody here who has cats probably can speak to this. Not all litter pans are created equal. Cats are extremely picky, so often it is a hit or miss. I have one cat that doesn't mind a hooded litter pan, and I have another cat who, as long as the hooded litter pan is humongous, he will use it. And it's just trying to find the right thing. When you're looking at that, you can always check at thrift stores, humane societies. Like, we have a little shop of gently used items. If we can't use it at the shelter, we sell them to make a little bit of money and to help the community. So litter pans are one example of things you can do till you find the right one. Pet food bowls. I know that often, especially with cats, we see what we call feline acne, and it's generally a reaction to plastic bowls. So we try to use glass, or ceramic, or metal bowls for cats. A lot of people don't realize that. They're like, what is this rash going on? They change the food and it's still happening. It's often a reaction to plastics. So that's one area to think about with cats. I like those heavier bowls for dogs as well because they can't flip them around as easily. I don't leave food down for my pets because they're chow hounds, but when I did have a dog that would free range eat, having a heavier bowl was important. Crates. Not all crates are created equal. When we talk about needing supplies for our pets, and we'll talk about crate training in a few minutes, but knowing what works for your pet. Some animals, dogs, like to be confined. Some like to have an open air crate. Some animals, you can start with one kind of crate and then move into another if they haven't been trained with crates. And those are things you can also look, you don't have to spend $100. Often shelters have those for sale, or looking online, looking on the Facebook shopping sites, all of that. I encourage people not to spend that extra money until you absolutely have to, because they are not inexpensive. So, training. This is like one of my favorite cartoons because it is my house. I don't know how I have to wipe down my counter before I make any kind of food or a drink, because my darn cat will not stay off the counter no matter what I've done. So I've started putting down foil, which he doesn't like to step on, but he still will. They still do whatever they want. So whether, as I said, it's a kitten getting on the countertops or an unruly dog, behavior issues can be the most stressful part of parenting. And these are often the main reasons why animals are surrendered to animal shelters. People say, well, we're moving, and then we have a questionnaire that we ask to help us with placing the animal. And then you find out that the dog doesn't like the kids and barks at strangers and does all these other things, which is really the reason why they are surrendering the animal. And many of these things are correctable with a little bit of time and attention. So you have your pet at home, and now what do we do? And this would be my pets. They make the mess and I clean it up as they watch me. So from day one, it's important to set boundaries with dogs, ensuring that they have a safe space, consistency, enrichment, exercise, positive reinforcement. It's really important before you bring home that pet to know where that pet's safe space is going to be. All of my dogs have crates. They don't all have to go in them, but they have those spaces that they go to. And most of them will go in them when they're tired of being bothered or if the house is a little chaotic. They go to those spaces. And setting those boundaries with your pets. It's really hard to train a dog not to get on your bed once they're like 80 pounds if you've let them sleep with you since they were 8 pounds. So you have it, and I know it's tough. I mean, my dogs, half of them sleep in the bed with us. The other two sleep in their spaces because they're bananas. But it's really important to decide if this is something that you're going to be happy with in 6 months, because it's really more difficult to untrain those habits out of them than to set those boundaries from the first start. And consistency with that is really, really important. We talk about, every time my dogs come in, they know they have to sit and they get a treat. They come in and they sit, and then we can move on with our next thing. Consistency of knowing they like to know they're eating at a certain time. I don't know how many of us here have dogs or cats, but my animals tell me if I'm late to dinner, for sure. So those kinds of things are helpful for you and your pets. Enrichment, we talked about toys. There's so many different ways to provide enrichment. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Exercise, start out with those, periods of time. Every morning, my 2 dogs go out at 5:30, and if it's not freezing cold, I go outside with them, and they get burn off some of their early morning crazy, those end of the evening. Some animals don't need that. My other 2 bulldogs look at me like I've gone to the bathroom, let me in, and they go back and lay down. So knowing what you need there. And
excuse me, Patty.
Sure.
I wanted to go back really quickly about
Sure.
that consistency issue. I think that it would be really important for anyone who's thinking about getting a pet, even if you've had pets forever, if you have another adult in the household, consistency with adults in the household is a little like having kids.
Yes.
It's like you can see Bob is letting the dog put her paws on his lap and encouraging that. And I'm always like, no, keep your paws to yourself. And, it leads to an interesting discussion. And sometimes it's like a little slap in the face. Don't, stop it.
Yeah. And that is a very important point. We have that problem in my house. My husband gets frustrated. I call her the puppy, but she's about almost a year and a half now. And her breed is naturally likes to jump up on you, the Boston Terrier, Frenchie mix. And he gets frustrated. And I tell him, I'm like, but you let her do it when you're playing. They can't decipher. Like everything is black and white to dogs. It could not be more black and white. It's either yes or no with them. And so when one person lets them do something and the other person doesn't, and then, it does jumble it up. So consistency is so important, and getting everybody in the house on board with what's okay. Because just because Susie lets the dog on her bed doesn't mean mom and dad want the dog on their bed. And, it does cause problems. So you are 100% right there. And we use positive reinforcement training at the shelter. There are many different trainers out there. There are many different styles, but generally for obedience and general training, positive reinforcement is really a good way to go. It's not fear-based. It's not punishment-based. It is rewarding good behavior going from day one. And we'll talk a lot more about that in a few minutes. When we're talking about cats and kittens, change is so stressful to them. Even we try to explain when we adopt pets out, yes, them leaving here and into your home is a positive big picture change. But our shelter has been their home. Our people have been their people. Their smells are different. What they're looking at is different. So when we talk about change with cats, we have got to give them time, a safe space, and their boundaries. I think it's funny when we say boundaries with cats because they don't care. But starting from day one with, areas that they're allowed in the house. My animals pretty much are allowed anywhere in the house except for 2 rooms, and that's because there's stuff in there that I don't want destroyed. But giving those cats their own room or their own bathroom for those first days, especially if you have a large house, and especially if you have other cats or dogs in the house. They need to feel comfortable there and that they're not going to be harmed. When we're introducing cats to cats, they need that time to smell each other and get used to it, very much so. So we call it the 3 days to decompress when a dog comes home. 3 weeks to learn your routine. So as we said, consistency, getting them into that routine. Those first 3 days, you're going to see those animals testing boundaries. They may shut down. They may hide a little bit. They may not want to eat or drink those first few days, and that's for dogs and cats. They may feel, a little overwhelmed. And that is not unusual. As we said, change, it's positive change in the big picture, but to them, their whole life has been turned upside down. The 3 weeks, they're learning their environment, they're learning what they can do, they're starting to feel you out, they're feeling more comfortable. And then the 3 months is when they finally are they know that they're where they're going to be. That trust between you and them really starts bonding in. I don't know how many of you have adopted a dog. I've had puppies and I've adopted adult dogs. And I can use my one dog, Breezy, as an example. She was 6 years old when we adopted her. She was a breeder bulldog. And she really couldn't care less about people. She was like, you're all right, but whatever. And she sort of just did her own thing. She liked the other dogs in the house because she had lived with other dogs. But we were just kind of the creatures that fed her and let her outside, and And one day, I was sitting on the couch and she jumped up on the couch. My dogs are allowed on the couch. I work so my dogs can have a nice life. So that's our household right now. And she got up on the couch and she put her head on my leg. And that was the first time she had ever really initiated human attention from one of us without us like petting her, and then she would come over, or like the other dogs coming over and she was with them. And that was about 3.5, 4 months into her being in our house. So we like to share with people that bond might not happen right away because we don't know what they've been through before us. She was very skinny. She had been used to breed dogs. When she was no longer able to make puppies, they kind of just opened the door and let her go. And she and her son ended up at the shelter. And I was lucky enough that she became one of my family members, but it takes time for that trust to build. So we encourage you not to give up too quickly on that, no matter what the breed is. Puppies, of course, are easier. They love everybody, and they're all about attention and love. But sometimes you get those puppies that just haven't been handled. Those first 5 weeks of life are really important, that humans are touching them and engaging with them, and if they don't get that, sometimes it can take a little bit longer for puppies to open up as well. When we talk about cats, just as I said, change is stressful. We just have to understand that they are going to hide. They're going to do, they might hiss at every other animal. They might hiss at you. They might run from you at first. They're very sensitive to smells and sounds and all of that. So giving them their safe space and just giving them time. If you find that you've adopted a kitten or a cat and you're struggling with that, we have some really amazing cat whispers at the Humane Society, at Talbot Humane, and I encourage people always to call us because they have some wonderful ideas on how to help make that transition better for you and the cat. So the honeymoon is over. Once a pet gains their confidence and they're comfortable in their surroundings, you may notice some behaviors that weren't noticeable or weren't there before. Sometimes barking, like being reactive to barking, bossiness with people or other pets. There's often a period where they revert in training, like their house training and basic obedience. We call it their listeners broken, because all of a sudden it's like they didn't learn anything for those couple months. And sometimes more significant behaviors show up, biting, aggression or destructiveness. And these are all things that need to be addressed sooner than later so that, again, they don't become habit. There's help for both minor and major issues. So when we're talking about minor issues like house training, leash walking, crate training, minor separation issues, if you're finding that when you leave and maybe you put your dog in the crate and they're like being destructive in the crate, that's usually a little separation anxiety, especially if you're only leaving them for like an hour. So my family, we do our very best that and we're lucky that we can because of work schedules. My husband's a chef, so he's there in the morning and then I can come in the afternoon. But we don't leave the animals in crates for more than 3 hours at a time, really, just so that they can get out and stretch their legs and what have you. But if you're finding that some of these behaviors, you're really struggling with getting them to walk on a leash, they're biting the leash, or you're struggling with house training, there are so many ways to work on these things, and it really depends on the animal and what you're seeing. There's online training. During COVID, this became very popular, and I know a lot of people who were successful with that. And then, of course, there's in-person training. PetSmart, the Talbot Kennel Club has classes. All of those just basic obedience classes help. One thing during COVID, and one of the things you may have read or heard is that shelters are seeing an increase specifically in dogs returning to shelters. And that we are seeing some of those have behavior issues. And a lot of that we are thinking, so I talked to a lot of directors and shelter staff across the country. We're thinking a lot of this is coming from that period where the animals did not get socialized. People didn't get them into classes. So now those issues are really showing themselves. Some more major issues Biting. So if you find that when you correct, you take something from your dog and he's bitey or they're snappy, or it's not simply a puppy being a puppy, issues, dog on dog aggression, dog on human aggression, severe separation anxiety where they're hurting themselves, they're busting out of crates, they're breaking furniture, they're destroying things, and reactivity are all things that really require some one-on-one talking to somebody, talking to a trainer, a behavioralist. Medication often helps. Sometimes our animals, just like we do, have anxiety. Chemical assistance has really made a difference in a lot of lives of animals and families. Animals that may have ended up being euthanized, unfortunately, or sent to shelters, with behavior modification and some medication has really changed the situation for everyone. And behavior modification for the entire house. Like we were talking about earlier, consistency with don't let the dog on the couch if you don't want the dog to be on the couch when he's 100 pounds. When we're talking about behavior issues, it is so important for everybody in the house to be on the same page. Doggy daycare training classes are pretty amazing. I have been following on Facebook a business called the Dog Company, and they're out of Salisbury, and they have, some of the dogs come Monday through Friday. Some of them come, 2 or 3 days a week. But the work that they do with these dogs is really amazing. They get them, they'll place like these dogs, they can get them to just, everybody sits in their space. They take them on doggy field trips. I really love this idea because as I shared, the puppy that I adopted, that my husband and I adopted, she's reactive to other dogs, and we're really trying to work on that. And I'm like, gosh, I wish there was something like that around, closer. But here we have, Keverton has doggy daycare, and there are a few others that do doggy daycare where they can get, your dog can be socialized, get some exercise during the day, which often is what is necessary. We find that some of the, especially destructive behavior, is just that the dog is not getting the stimulation that they need.
Patty, you have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Does Ethan have cat trainers, or do you have to go to Annapolis and further?
For cat trainers, sometimes it depends on what's going on with the cat. Sometimes your veterinarian is a good resource. As I said, we have some really good people at the shelter who are cat-centric, who can help you with that. Cats are interesting because they just don't like to do what you want them to.
They don't like to be trained. They like to train you.
Yeah. But when you're having issues with aggression, biting, that's really something that has to be worked on, because cats can be a little scary when they don't want to behave, in the realm of normal cat behavior. Often, if you have, of course, in Maryland now, it's a violation for a veterinarian to declaw cats in the state of Maryland. But we find a lot of behavior issues come from declawed cats, and that generally is believed to be because we're taking away their one means of protection, which is their claws. Also, the pain that's involved in the declaw and all of that. Cats are very trauma. They don't forget it when they've had trauma. So jumping on issues with cats before it becomes even worse is really important. But there are, like we talked about dogs and medication and behavior modification, there are a lot of things you can do if you're having problems with your cats, for sure.
How does Talbot Humane identify some of those issues before approving an adoption?
So when our animals come in, we give them a cooling off period. So even if stray animals, the county laws, we have to hold them for 7 days before we can even consider putting them up for adoption. An owner surrendered animal is automatically, technically, our legal property. Of course, we have, when people have changed, we've had people call the next day and like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was, being reactive to a situation. And then we talk to them and we try to give them some resources, to return their animal and help them with their behavior issues or whatever's going on. But we give every animal at least 3 days to chill out in the shelter and get used to the smells and the sounds. Sometimes animals will be in our in restriction to only staff and highly trained volunteers for weeks, because we're really working on finding out. Sometimes there's medical reasons behind behavior issues. Sometimes it's situational, that they really aren't as quote unquote crazy as they're behaving, but they're in a shelter, and that's not natural. Cats do not like to generally be caged. So we really try to work on seeing if cats live well together, because we have our condos. If they're cats that live well together, we know that because we work on engaging them together and living together. Sometimes we know we have cats that are not going to be okay with other cats. It upsets potential adopters sometimes when we tell them, we can't adopt this cat to you because he really doesn't like other cats. And it's not going to be a comfortable living situation for you, this cat, or your other cat. And sometimes things don't show up, as we said earlier, for a couple months. Like, we didn't see that behavior at the shelter. Perhaps the previous owner, if they did see it, they didn't tell us about it. So while we do our very best for all animals, we have a bunny right now. Well, he just got adopted, but he's food aggressive. Like, he's super lovey, but if you put food in his cage, you better let him finish his food before you put your hand in there. I mean, how did he learn that behavior? Who knows? But we do our very best. And I think a lot of shelters do try, because we don't want to see them come back. Our goal is happy forever homes for the people and the pets. So that's really important. If we have an animal that we're really concerned about, Susan Sarabin, who is a behavioralist who lives in the area, she unfortunately is retired last year from seeing clients, but she still comes to the shelter for us, and we'll do some assessing of animals. There are some other behaviorists in the area, and if you are having an issue, you could certainly call your vet or call the shelter, and we can provide you with some of those names. But those are people who really, they do a full screening of you. They talk to you about what's going on in your house, all the behaviors of your animal. Sometimes they have like a multiple page questionnaire for you. They require you to have a wellness exam from your vet within the past 6 months, so that you know if there's any off blood work, or there's any kind of medical issue that could be causing behavior issues. Because again, that's our first question. When, say, a cat stops using the litter pan and people call us, we ask if they've taken it to the vet, because often there's a medical reason for those kinds of things. But behaviorists are not inexpensive, but they're worth the time and money if they can help you and your pet, because I think most of us want our pets to be our forever pets.
We've been amazed at how good some breeders are at assessing the behavior of a puppy and knowing what your needs are, and knowing which of those puppies that all look alike are going to be the best fit in your household.
Yeah, a reputable breeder is an amazing resource for you. If you're going to a breeder, I know there are always going to be breeders. There are always going to be people who want specific traits, specific breeds, and that is fine. We just encourage you to do your research on those breeders. Like you said, a good breeder is going to match the right pet to the right person. They're not just going to take your money and close the door. You know, we brokers, you know, if you don't get to see the parents, there's a point that you might want to think about it when you're talking about a breeder. If they don't let you come to their property, that's a red light also. Most reputable breeders are open and honest for you to meet the parents so you can see their temperament, to meet, you know, other dogs in their litters and their other dogs that they have on the property, and how they're being cared for. So there are some serious red flags for not being able to really get some answers from those breeders. A reputable breeder does not want that puppy to come back to them, and they don't want that puppy to go to a humane society or pass down 5 different people. And a reputable breeder will take that dog back at any time if things don't work out for you. They generally will take it back, or they work with fellow people in their breed specific area to help find a new home for it. So that's something to always ask. If you're going to go to a breeder, know those questions to ask. And then that's definitely red flags if they don't let you. Some online resources, right on our website, we have Ask the Trainer, and that's Susan Sarabin. If you click those links, she every month gives us a new blog about different behavior issues, be it separation anxiety, choosing foods, nutrition. You know, when we talk about nutrition can play a part in behavior. All of those things are really important, that we're meeting all the needs of that animal A to Z. And when we're talking about online classes, master classes, I don't know if you know about those, but they have some dog training classes. I clicked in and I was looking at some of the previews. I haven't watched any of them myself, but they seem like they're probably pretty good. You know, I think mostly positive reinforcement, and all of those things. So there are resources out there for you. You know, the goal is a happy family. You know, our pets are family, and we want to help you and your pets have a positive life together. So, do we have any questions?
Well, we've been peppering you with questions as you go.
You're fine. I'm fine with that. I prefer that because that's how my brain works. So it's perfect. I really appreciate you guys spending time with me. This is my little puppy in my flower pot there. If you have any questions or needs, you can certainly get in touch with me at the shelter. I am always there. And then our website is full of resources for you as well.
I did not know that. That'll be interesting to go look at.
Click under the adoption button and you'll see there's resources for dogs and cats. And then of course our Meet the Trainer, and we have other options. If people need help rehoming pets, you can post them on our website and keep them at home until we help you facilitate a positive adoption, all of those things. So.
Well, very interesting. Well, any other questions from anybody else here? If not, there will be a YouTube video created from this. And you probably noticed that we were recording. That will go back out to everybody who registered for the course, and eventually it'll go into our library, which is free to anybody who sees a course and they want to take it from the library. They can just register and get the link. And Patty, as I said earlier, will go ahead and provide that to you so that you can share that with all the people that get the pets from you.
Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in today and for this opportunity. So thanks so much.
I have a question.
Oh, wait.
Sure.
So I suspect that the majority of the animals that come to the Humane Society are cats and dogs. Do you see any exotics that come through? And
We do. We do. Last year, we had a 23% increase in our small mammals and exotics. As I shared at the beginning, we're seeing an increase in reptiles in homes. I'm a reptile person, always have been. I think I got my first lizard when I was 11. And so, but they are definitely increasing. The problem that we're seeing is that people are buying them for their kids, not really understanding that every animal has some level of care. You know, guinea pigs have to have vitamin C every day or they get rickets. People don't realize that. So, you know, they need romaine, they need vitamin C drops. All these animals, rabbits, guinea pigs need to be handled, or they can really become, you know, just not pleasant animals. And then we have to undo that. When we're seeing reptiles, people are getting reptiles and not understanding just the complexities of caring for those animals. They can get brittle bone disease, basically from not having proper nutrition. They can die from not having the proper temperature, humidity. Some of them are very specific in what they need, and some others are pretty hardy. But, you know, like I said, I have a giant tortoise, and he has his own shed and heater, and he hangs out. He actually, his house is part of the man cave. So my husband made him a door, so, and he has an enclosed area that he goes out in.
Do you send your husband out there too?
Yes, it's nice. The tortoise and my husband. And then I have two Russian tortoises that are, you know, they're small. They're probably going to be at max out at like 8 pounds. And they, you know, are going to be with me. I've had to put in my will all 3 tortoises are going to our niece because they'll likely, if we take good care of them, outlive us. And people don't think about, you know, that reptiles can live quite a while. The gecko we have came from a young man that my husband was in one of the kitchens my husband was working in. He was leaving for college, and he was going to give it to this other kid. And my husband's like, that kid doesn't have the brain cells to care for this, so we're bringing it home. We've now had it for 14 years. And, you know, we didn't know a gecko was going to live for 14 years.
What about birds? Because birds are another one where a lot of them live for a long while. Do you find people trying to bring birds over to have them adopted?
We see a lot more of the small birds like cockatiels, you know, parakeets, finches. We see a lot of those. We don't see a great deal of the large birds. The reason I'm in this room is because I have a yellow-naped Amazon who's lived in my office for 10 years, and he likes to scream and cuss, so I didn't think that would be appropriate. So that would not be appropriate. But, you know, he came to us in an odd way. The people were evicted and they abandoned him. And he bites and he cusses, so he ended up coming in my office, and he's my bird now. But we don't see a whole lot of the large birds. I think most people who get those large birds are pretty good about, now tomorrow I'll walk in, there'll be a parrot in there because I've said this out loud, but we don't see a lot of those. Now, some other shelters have seen quite a bit. There have been a couple hoarding cases on the Western Shore, my friend's shelter. And then when we have those, we have other medical issues because humans can get very sick from those birds. We've had a colleague had a staff member who's on this lifetime disability because illness she contracted from breathing in the dust from the birds. So they're very specialized. So I feel like people either take really good care of those large birds or they don't.
I lived in Pasadena, near Pasadena, California for a while, and they had someone just let the birds out loose. And so they have these whole flocks of parrots that go flocking around in the different neighborhoods. So I'm sure they'll enjoy that. It's interesting when you wake up and they're in the window outside or the tree outside your window.
Screaming. Yeah, because they're very loud. Very, very loud.
I have another question.
Sure.
So a lot of us are getting to the age where we may maybe living by ourselves, okay,
Right.
widowed or widowed. So what kind of provisions do people make for their pets? Let's say someone's not checking in on you for a while, and the pet is, living in the house with a with a with a dead parent.
We've had that. We've
Yeah.
had that. Yeah. We encourage all pet parents to have a plan, just like you have a for your children.
Mhm.
If you're responsible for another living creature, we encourage you to have people who are willing to take on those animals.
Mhm.
We've also had people who've left, who've talked to us at the Humane Society, and they've left a certain amount of money in their will for us to take care of the animals, and that we help pay for those animals. So once those animals are adopted, whomever adopts those animals, we pay for their medical bills and their food and all in perpetuity because of the donation these people have set forth in their plans. Other people, especially people who have elderly people who have elderly pets, they've made the decision that when they pass, that pet should probably be euthanized, especially if they're have medical issues. We encourage people, if you think that pet still has a chance at a happy life, we certainly will work on finding it a home. But it's at the end of the day, in Maryland, animals are looked at as property, so you can do with it as you please as long as it's humane. But there are lots of things that people can do, and we have some literature on planning, your next steps with pets. But we look at it as if you have a living creature that you're responsible for, have a plan.
Mhm. Thank you.
Sure. Oh, I can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
That's my fault. Sorry. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. It's
sure.
very interesting to hear this, and you gave us all a very good summary of what to expect if you adopt a pet, whether you're adopting it from a friend or from the Humane Society or just deciding to bring a pet into your home. It's a big responsibility at the end of the day.
It is. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.